I found a way to bypass the New York Times paywall just so I could read this article to you guys, because I have been seeing so much talk, so much conversation about the Hantavirus, and whether or not it's going to be the next COVID, whether it's going to bring about the next big pandemic, tons of lockdowns, and if we're going to see a repeat of history. People are really scared, others are oddly really excited. So, I've got an article here that dives into this cruise ship hantavirus outbreak situation that everyone's been talking about, and dives into whether or not the science around the hantavirus suggests that we should actually really be worried at all. My nose is itching like crazy right now, good lord. Anyway, with that said, let's get right into this article, because I have not read it myself yet, and I really am curious to know what is the deal with hantavirus. Should we really be worried about it? Because as far as I knew before this, it is a rodent-borne disease that requires you to basically put something that has been pooped or peed on by a rat into your mouth. That is a hyper-specific requirement for a disease to spread, and not common in the Western world. So my immediate reaction to finding out that people are panicking about hantavirus outbreaks in America was to roll my eyes. So we'll have to find out whether or not I was right to, think that this is not really a big deal. Alright. How a nature cruise turned into a nightmare. The hantavirus outbreak on the MV Honduras set off alarms for a world still traumatized by COVID. For those on board, the danger was much closer. The grim-faced captain had bad news for the people gathered in the lounge of the MV Hundis. One of their fellow passengers had died. I think Hundis is like Swedish for dog, I think. Or Hundius? I think it's Swedish for dog, maybe? I don't know. Tragic as it is, it was due to natural causes, we believe, the captain Jan Dobrogowski. Okay, maybe it's actually Polish, because that is a Polish as fuck last name, Dobrogowski, told them on April 12th. He added that the ship's doctor had said the man was not infectious, so the ship is safe. So apparently already out the gate, the infected patient on the ship is not said to be infectious. And that is what I understand to be true of hantavirus. Like, it is very, very hard for it to spread from person to person. And even if it does once, the idea of it spreading from person to person a third time is even crazier. At least in, like, a place like America, where we wash our hands, Less than 2 weeks earlier, the captain had convened the same group for a celebratory toast, as the Hundis left Argentina to sail the South Atlantic for birdwatching and wildlife spotting on some of the world's most remote islands. Now, passengers consoled the dead man's widow, Mirjam Schliprud Huisman, who is 69, of the Netherlands. I am so sorry for butchering her name. Sorry for any of my Netherlands viewers. Your names are rough for me. She and her husband, Leo Schilprud, also 69, nice, had crossed South America in pursuit of rare birds. Some asked if she would prefer the trip to be cut short. Quote, "Everyone is here for a purpose," she responded, according to Ruhi Sinet, a Turkish documentary filmmaker who was on the ship. She urged her fellow birdwatchers to push on because her husband would have wanted to do the same. Man, she's down to continue the cruise. She wants to see those birds. Honestly, yeah, I'm sure her husband would want her to continue the cruise. Within weeks, 2 more passengers, including Miss Schilprud Huisman, would be dead. Oh, fuck, she died? Damn, okay, hold on, it's spreading. It is indeed spreading among the ship. The cause, health officials say, was almost certainly the Andes species of the hantavirus. They were in South America, makes sense. A family of viruses carried by rodents that can spread between humans. Over the following weeks, a world still traumatized by the coronavirus pandemic watched anxiously as the passengers and crew of the Hundis, hailing from at least 23 countries, lived the nautical nightmare of a potential outbreak in close quarters far out at sea. I think what a lot of people are worried about here is that people infected with hantavirus, when returning to their home countries, it's going to be a bunch of different countries that are going to see outbreaks following this cruise, because everyone's from so many different places. As health officials sought to contain the virus, understand how it had come aboard and trace the contacts of passengers who had disembarked, people on the ship depicted their journey in interviews and social media posts. It was a trip priced roughly between $8,000 and $27,000 that began with the promise of seeing life in the wild and ended in protective gear and quarantine. The Hundis and most of its passengers eventually sailed to Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where local leaders did all they could to stop them from coming, including suggesting that rats might swim ashore and bring the virus with them. Honestly, that's my big concern. Wherever the virus came from, it's clearly on the ship. Like, I don't think they got the virus on land and then brought it on the ship. It seems like they were on the ship and their food got contaminated. Maybe their utensils got contaminated. All it would take, really, would be a rat climbing over all of the forks on the part that you put your mouth in, and then everybody eats, or some of the forks, and then everybody eats, and then one person gets sick, and then, if that continues, if they've got a kitchen infested with rats, that can be a non-stop, like, just more and more people getting sick with it. And so the real concern is, will a hantavirus rat escape the ship and make it into one of the countries, perhaps a first world country, that doesn't generally have hantavirus problems, that it shouldn't be. And maybe, although then again, hantavirus doesn't really spread voraciously, especially if you're not living in closed, shared environments like a cruise ship. I understand why people are so worried, though, to be fair, because when you remember back to how COVID started, a lot of the first initial cases that were being talked about were on cruise ships. Do you guys remember that? There's a hantavirus outbreak in the country they visited? Ooh, good point. Do you guys remember when COVID was just starting up and people were just, like, talking about it spreading, and there was a quarantined cruise ship and multiple quarantined flights that had entered America, and they were literally being quarantined because of COVID? If I remember right, the first patients were sightseeing at landfall and had multiple rat issues. Okay, good. That's a good thing to mention, Wyvern. The fact that it's spread throughout the ship, though, over the course of weeks suggests that there are hantavirus rats on that ship. And I think that the Canary Islands were absolutely valid to say, we don't want your ship docking off of our coast. What if a rat swims off board? We don't want hantavirus here. I completely understand their reasoning. I get it. As of Friday, the World Health Organization said that at least 10 cases, 8 confirmed and 2 suspected of the hantavirus had been traced to the ship. It said 2 of the 3 deaths had been attributed to the virus, and that it was strongly suspected to have caused the third. Around the world, dozens of people have been forced to quarantine in case they develop symptoms during the virus's incubation period, which can be as long as 6 weeks. That is pretty severe, actually. Now, can be as long as 6 weeks can mean a lot of things, but if we take that at face value, that is a terrifying length for a disease that can kill you at such a high rate to be able to incubate in your body before you become symptomatic. That is to say, you could be, or before you become symptomatic, but you can totally spread it. You could be contagious, like you could, use a fork and then someone else shares it, and I think that can spread it. That's something people have been concerned about. Around the world, dozens of people have been forced to quarantine in case they develop symptoms during the virus's incubation period, which can be as long as 6 weeks. In the United States, where 18 people from the ship were in special facilities, health officials said on Thursday that they were monitoring 16 other people who had been on a flight with someone known to have been infected, as well as 7 more who left the cruise ship in April. Public health officials have stressed that the threat to the general public is low based on what is known about the virus and the close, sustained contact usually required to spread it. Still, scientists who have studied the virus for decades caution that it is unpredictable and that under certain circumstances it can be transmitted without direct contact. Over the past month, the specter of another pandemic turned the world's attention to a single cruise journey. It began with passengers sharing breakfast buffets, sitting together during wildlife and astronomy lectures, and lining up for cones at ice cream socials. But once news of the hantavirus spread, they retreated into isolation, avoiding an invisible pathogen that had become as palpable as the swells that rolled below them. How much you want to bet that having gotten COVID before, hantavirus is way more likely to kill you? Who wants to put money on that? 77 species in 13 hours. The Hondies, sailing under a Dutch flag, named after a Flemish it's a Flemish name, a Flemish cartographer, was built to navigate icy waters and go to some of the world's most far-flung places. It attracted wildlife lovers eager to glimpse hourglass dolphins, fur seals, assorted whales, and penguins, and rare migratory birds. Lecturers and guides also joined. The ship began the journey on April 1st in Ushuaia, Argentina, with passengers disembarking at various islands. Some joined the trip for just parts of the route. Passengers included a Turkish birdwatcher who posted under the name Bird Detective, an American travel influencer, and the ill-fated couple from the Netherlands. Back home in their Dutch village, Hollerwick, the couple's backyard bordered the woods. Back in their Dutch village, Hollerwick, the couple's backyard bordered the woods. They walked the quiet, orderly streets on the lookout for birds, binoculars usually hanging from Mr. Schlipperud's neck. And Jan van Scheppen, a neighbor, said they traveled a lot. In the months before the couple joined the cruise, they had traipsed around South America in a camper seeking glimpses of wild birds. On February 6th, in Algarrobo del Aguila, Argentina, they spotted 36 species, including the spectacled tyrant and the Chaco earth creeper. Seems pretty likely that this is all the info about the disease that we know for now. Yeah, the article just kind of talks about the cruise, except for here at the end, it seems. Here at the end, it seems to get back to the topic. When the ship requested medical testing, protocols kicked in under the WHO's regulations. Officials in Cape Verde received the alarm, loud and clear. So did an anxious world. This makes us jump, said Anne Lindstrand, a representative for the WHO in Cape Verde, adding that at first she feared it could have been a new COVID. Specialists boarded the ship to treat sick passengers and provide protective equipment. 3 more people were medevaced out, including the ship's doctor and a British guide. The body of the German woman remained aboard. Passengers did not know when or where they could disembark. These were the worst days, said Javier Padilla, Spain's Secretary of State for Health, who received status reports from the Spanish passengers. Cape Verde argued that it was too small a country to handle the outbreak. The WHO reached out to Spain to see if the ship could go to the Canary Islands. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez agreed, motivated, he said, by a sense of solidarity in a global health crisis. Local leaders in the Canary Islands fought his decision, but at 7:15 p.m. on May 6, the ship left for the islands, and the morale on board improved. Birdwatching also resumed. It really does seem like it's a bit like fearing a rabies outbreak. Is it terrifying if it happens? Will it be borderline apocalyptic? Yes. But how likely is it? Extremely unlikely. To the point where it is like it's like talking about the big one happening, like the San Andreas fault line finally going and a massive, like, city-destroying earthquake spreading out across the entire West Coast. Like, that is a very real possibility, and if it does happen, it is no question apocalyptic. But whether or not it will happen at all is, or any time in our lifetimes, is very, very up in the air, very unlikely. And that seems to be the case with the Hantavirus. While I think a lot of people are valid to be afraid that this could be the next COVID, all the evidence suggests that while it is definitely a concern for the people on board this cruise ship, it's probably not going to be the next global pandemic. This is probably not going to be the next COVID. But hey, if I end up being wrong, then clip me, because I'll probably have much worse things to worry about than being wrong if I'm wrong, such as dying of Hantavirus. I do not want to die of Hantavirus.